Alrighty. Well, once again, good morning or good afternoon if you're joining us from the East Coast. My name is Paul Palan. I'm the product educator here at DMF. I just wanted to let you all know I'm unfortunately not able to join you all from our studio and our typical location today. So I won't be able to share all of the product that I normally do. However, this is definitely more of a topic based webinar, so it works out pretty well in that favor. I'm going to be covering fan-rated junction boxes, talk a little bit about why we need them, where they're used, and how we sort of meet those ratings. So there's a few different sections for today's presentation, going over pretty much exactly just that. And I'll talk about our newest update to our F4NC housing, which is our fan-rated junction box. So first of all, what is really fan rating? Um, this is something that's covered under the UL 514A standard. It's a safety standard for metallic outlet boxes. I will note there's another UL standard 514C that covers plastic boxes, which are also used throughout the industry. It contains really similar standards, but just differs slightly based on the construction of the box, of course. But for the context of this presentation, I'm going to focus on 514A because that's often what's most used commercially and in all of our products. So the UL testing requirements dictate some pretty rigorous standards for junction boxes that go into the ceiling for, as they call it, ceiling suspended sand fan support. In other words, a junction box that's meant to support a ceiling fan. Junction boxes for that kind of application must be explicitly marked as able to support a ceiling fan with a maximum weight rating. So that's something to really know and look out for. And boxes that have that marking really undergo a number of different tests, both for static loads, things like fixtures and chandeliers, as well as dynamic loads, which really is a ceiling fan. So those testing procedures are sort of laid out in this sort of abbreviated way here. I'll point you to a resource at the end. We have a technical bulletin that goes over these in greater detail. However, this is sort of a summary of what those two different sets of tests are. So for static load testing, this falls under what we call luminaire support. In other words, the fixture, a general static fixture. The assembly, the housing or junction box must be tested to a 4-to-1 load ratio. So in our case, the F4NC is rated for a 50-pound fixture. So it could have a 50-pound chandelier or any sort of, pendant, any type of fixture hanging from that junction box. That means that the junction box has been tested up to a 200-pound load. So that 200-pound load has been hung from the junction box at its hanging points. It has to be tested at its maximum joist spacing. So again, in the case of a housing like the F4NC, we have adjustable bar hangers that can go up to 24 inches. So we're tested at the maximum 24-inch joist spacing. And when put under that load, the bar hanger and the entire assembly must not deflect more than 1/4 of an inch. So it's a pretty small amount. There can't be any bending, breaking, of course, and it must stay securely attached to the frame, the joists. And then once that load is removed, it's visually inspected again for any possible defects or damage. The second test, so this is really where the ceiling fan support comes into play. This is the dynamic load testing. So these tests are performed in two different scenarios. One is a standard horizontal installation. So you're looking at one here. So any sort of flat ceiling is a standard horizontal installation. And then it's done again at a 30-degree incline. So if you have any sort of slope ceilings up to 30 degrees, this is testing for that sort of scenario. The ceiling fan is installed and must run at some very specific conditions for 24 hours. Those conditions really dictate the length of the stem, the size of the blades, the exact weight of the fan, all those specific parameters, even the velocity of the fan blades. So that has to run for 24 hours. It is then stopped, and then we have to repeat that with one mounting screw. So those two screws that go into the junction box, one of those has to be loosened. and a 40-gram imbalance has to be put on one of the blades. So the fan is now going to be moving a lot more sort of rotational torque and as if it were in a sort of improperly installed scenario. After both of those tests are done, you have to then examine the box for any visible damage, strip mounting screws, and it has to again remain securely mounted to the structure. This test is also repeated 3 times with 3 unique samples. So we have 3 different fresh junction boxes that this is repeated for to ensure that this is really a repeatable process. So all of that happens just to ensure that any ceiling fan that's installed and supported from this junction box is going to be able to withstand not only sort of normal conditions, but any sort of abnormal or improperly installed conditions as well. So why do we care so much about this topic of fan rating within a junction box? Where is it really required? So there was an update in the 2020 version of the NEC that really expanded the locations where fan-rated junction boxes are required to pretty much all locations. And that's defined as habitable rooms of dwelling occupancies in a location acceptable for the installation of a ceiling suspended paddle fan. So slightly open to some interpretation. However, there are certain places where it's just physically not possible, such as within 2 feet of a wall or something where there's not going to be enough diameter for that fan to fit. The NEC also explicitly spells out what a habitable room is. So it's most living spaces within a home or a residence, multifamily units, any of those places where people are going to live, work, sleep, et cetera, et cetera. So it really does exclude bathrooms, hallways, utility closets, closed closets, all those sorts of places, places where you're not going to actually spend time living per se. But aside from that, pretty much any other ceiling location in a dwelling unit or a residency is going to have, if you're putting a junction box there, it must be fan rated. This is really to protect people into the future. If you have somebody, a tenant or just a building owner that goes in and decides they want to swap out this pendant for a ceiling fan instead, that's really there to future-proof in that scenario so that people have a safe, secure mounting place to put that ceiling fan if they ever decide to put one in themselves. So just something to keep in mind. This is really expanded. So any junction box type products that are sold now are really it's really beneficial to have that rating because most locations are going to require it in these types of projects. We should also note that this doesn't necessarily apply to all commercial projects. This is really for dwelling occupancies and residencies, but that's a large portion of projects that are out there for sure. So with all of that, I'll go over some of the changes and updates that we've made to our DMF product here. So I've referenced the F4NC to this point. So this is DMF's fire-rated 4-inch junction box. Again, the fan-rated aspect of this is a new update. One thing that was changed in this iteration or this new version of the product is we've added 2 additional mounting screws in the ends of the bar hanger. So you'll see on my screen here, we have 3 on each side, 3 pre-installed screws that go into our wooden joists. So we've added that additional one in the middle. That has given it some extra rigidity and another sort of secure mounting point. So if you're using this in any fan-rated application, you just have to be sure to use all 6 of those screws when you install the junction box. This is fan rated for up to 35 pounds in the United States and Mexico. You should note that Canada has some slightly different requirements for the thread sizing of the mounting screws that the ceiling fan is used to go into the junction box, which don't quite align with what is commonly used here in the United States. So just keep that in mind. And this is rated for up to 16-inch joist spacing. So the bar hangers themselves do go to 24 inches. However, we're fan rated at a maximum of 16 inches in that joist spacing. So just keep that in mind as well. And it's required to be installed in wood joists. Aside from the fan rating aspect of this product, the F4NC is also a fire-rated junction box. So it has that notable red paint on the outside that gives you, aside from the paint itself, the material and the construction and the volume all fall within the UL requirements for a fire-rated junction box as well. And then finally, it does have some other great features. Obviously, the adjustable bar hangers give you a lot more flexibility in placement and where that junction box goes. Um, and it gives you a lot of ease of sort of installation and adjustability. So the vertical mounting height, for instance, the height of the junction box within your drywall or your ceiling material can easily be adjusted from the inside using some small thumb screws. This particular housing can actually be set between 0 inches and 1.5 inches in ceiling thickness. So for one, if you have maybe an instance where you need to use like a junction box adapter and have a smaller mounting plate, you can use that. In that case, the junction box can be set all the way back so that the front of the junction box is flush with the top of your ceiling material. So one unique thing for all of our housings. And then obviously we can extend that all the way down to 1.5 inches. So if you have double drywall or really thick ceilings, you can have your junction box be flush with the front of your ceiling or the bottom of your ceiling plane as you normally would. So there's a number of products that this junction box is also compatible with. So just a quick look at a few of those. All of the DMF cylinders that we have in our lineup obviously are going to work very well and easily with this. Those all mount into a standard junction box. I should note that our X series cylinders, if you're going with the surface mount, there are two different mounting flanges. The X series is a 3-inch diameter cylinder. So we have a standard flange that will fit into the standard 4-inch opening that is on this junction box. But we also do have a flangeless version that is smaller. That is one instance where you would need that plaster ring or that adapter to change to a smaller 3-inch hole in the ceiling, and is an instance where that 0-inch ceiling thickness would come in handy. Our DRD, our M series fixed downlight module also has a surface mount trim that will work in this fixture in this configuration as well. So if you need all the features, all the spec options that you get out of an M series module, but only have the 2.5 inches to work with in your ceiling depth, that will be an option that will work. We also have the more affordable H series and S series. So the H series in the flush mount trim is a surface mounted trim option that sits about 1/2 inch below the ceiling and gives you all the performance of an H series module. So warm dim options, great dimming, and lumen selectable output in again, a shallow plenum, junction box solution. And then finally, our S series is our surface mounted product, is meant to install into junction boxes, both standard 3-inch and 4-inch junction boxes. And of course, the F4NC is the standard housing available for that fixture family as well. I didn't include it on this slide, but I should also note that our A series, which is our illuminated address signage product, is meant to be mounted into a wall. So this housing can work equally well in vertical applications as well. So if you have a wall mounted fixture or, again, for example, our A series that needs to be mounted vertically, this will work equally well in those types of applications. Finally, I'm just going to point out a couple of resources for you guys. So we have a technical bulletin again on this topic that spells out all the information here in a little bit more detail. So it references the different standards that are used, as well as real specifics on the testing, time requirements, fan speed, all those sorts of very specific things. And then again, references our new updated F4NC product as well. So that's posted on our website under resources and additional resources. You'll be able to find that with all of our technical bulletins. And with that, that sort of wraps up everything I have to share with you all today. I want to thank you guys for joining us. If anybody has any additional questions, I'll hang around for a minute or two. And if not, we'll be sending out our trainings for the month of June relatively soon towards the end of the week. So please stay tuned for that. And we look forward to seeing you at more of these trainings. Thank you.